Bobby Babich under fire by Bills fans just 6 weeks into the season after a brutal start defensively for the Buffalo Bills. But Sean McDermott is still defending his young defensive coordinator, and I'm going to tell you why or why not Bobby Babich should be fired. Well, we have about 90% of you guys not subscribed, so be sure to hit that subscribe button if you aren't yet. But in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Bills' defense this season and just exactly what has gone wrong for them with Bobby Babich as their defensive coordinator. Well, if we look at Bobby Babich right here, obviously a young defensive coordinator, but for those of you that don't know, he was risen from the linebackers coach spot into defensive coordinator when Sean McDermott decided to hand off play calling duties on the defensive side of the football to somebody else. The Bills needed some sort of defensive coordinator. Sean McDermott was acting as head coach and defensive coordinator, and Babich was at risk of being poached by the New York Giants a couple of years ago to become their defensive coordinator. So the Bills said, well, we'll elevate you with in-house, and the rest is history. But the question has been, what is going wrong with this Bills defense? They have been struggling mightily, and a lot of people right now are blaming Babich. Now, what exactly has gone wrong for this Bills defense? Well, it's been a lot of things. First of all, the run defense has been absolutely preposterously bad. They have allowed 4.38 yards after contact per rush. So basically, when they first make contact with the running back, that running back on average gains an additional 4 yards after that contact. The second worst team in the NFL, well, it's the the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm thinking about the Atlanta Falcons game, who they absolutely terrorized the Bills with their running game. But the Chargers are second worst in the NFL with 3.65 yards after contact per rush. The gap between the Bills and Chargers at 1 and 2 is the same as the gap between the Chargers and the Commanders at 2 and 20. So just not only are the Bills the worst in the league at, bringing down the ball carrier, but they are the worst by a significant margin. And that really does come down to coaching. They're not able to execute on their tackles. They are not able to bring down the ball carrier when they have a chance, and it has made their lives absolutely miserable on the defensive side of the football. But it's not just the run game that has been struggling for the Buffalo Bills. It's the passing game on defense as well. The Bills are 31st in passes broken up with just 6. The Rams are first with 22. The Bills are tied for 30th in forced incompletion, so basically passes defended in some way. The defender is making a play on the ball and forcing the pass to be incomplete. And they are significantly behind the Cardinals, who are in first place there. And the Bills, just through 6 games this year, have 12 PBUs. That's pass breakups. And that is tied for 20th in the NFL. So just all areas of the ball, they have been really, really outstandingly bad. And that is the reason why they have lost these last 2 games against the Patriots and against the Cardinals. And really, they should have lost week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens, but the Ravens gifted them that game. The Bills did not get really any stops on the defensive side of the ball except for that Derrick Henry strip that Ed Oliver was able to force. And you can look at this team and say, well, they're still 4 and 2. How are they so bad defensively, but they're still 4 and 2? Well, the answer to that is their wins have come against teams who are 3 and 21 on the season. I'll say that again. 3 wins, 21 losses. That is the record of the teams they've played against. And you can say, well, that's the Ravens before they lost Lamar Jackson. Obviously, the record has been worse since then. But we saw that Ravens game. The Bills defense gave up 40 points. 40 points, and they were lucky to win that game. It took a superhuman effort by Josh Allen. It took remarkably lucky plays by the Bills to, force the Ravens to make horrible mistakes, force the Ravens to really make unforced errors, really. And that has been the difference in being a winning team and a mediocre team. So that has been the big reason why the Bills have been struggling, and we see it come to fruition in this graphic here. This is a graphic showing plays on the ball. So on the bottom, you see defensive interceptions. On the left side, we see passes broken up. And these are the past 6 seasons the Bills have had. They've always been in this upper echelon here. They've always been very good at making plays on the football, forcing turnovers. And this year, 2025, they have been absolutely terrible. Absolutely an anomaly. And you can say, well, maybe they're due for some positive regression here in these next couple of weeks. That could be true, but we have just seen a lack of talent on the defensive side of the football. I'm not sure what's happened with Christian Benford, but he got an absolute payday, as you see here. $191 million in contract extensions given out to defensive players by Brandon Beane, and $42 million in defensive free agents brought in, including their first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and 6th round picks spent on defense. And it's as bad as it's ever been. So something is not adding up. And if you ask Sean McDermott, it has nothing to do with Bobby Babich. He was asked if it's time to take over play calling, and he said, no, that has not crossed my mind at this point. And then he went on to say this: Bobby's young in this position. He works extremely hard. He's gifted, and play calling is one of the harder things to do in this business. I'm going to push back on this because I understand where he's coming from. I think for a team that is rebuilding and trying to find their identity, it is important to establish and give your defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator some confidence. Stick with them through rough times. But this is not a team that's rebuilding. This is not a team that's finding their identity. They have no identity, and they have won the AFC East 5 years in a row now. They're going on 6 years. They need to win now. This is absolutely, really, the only thing they should be focused on. And I get wanting to instill confidence in Babich, but you have to have a line. And, okay, let's say we wait, we see what happens in the Panthers game. If the Bills look really solid against a pretty mediocre Panthers offense, mediocre at best Panthers offense, then you say, okay, maybe we can stick with Babich for a little bit longer. But they have the Chiefs coming up after that. And if Babich puts on, and the defense puts on another bad performance against the Panthers, there's no question in my mind. You have to make that decision. Sean McDermott has to be calling plays against a Chiefs team that is playing very well right now. They just got back their wide receiver 1 in Rashee Rice. And this is a game that could decide home field advantage come playoff time. And anything is important at this point when you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs, because that has been the Bills' Achilles heel, as you all know as Buffalo Bills fans, and as the media and your friends who are fans of other teams, I'm sure, have constantly let you know, because they've let me know how the Chiefs own the Bills. Mahomes owns the Bills. We all know it. It's obviously true. But you need to get any advantages you can, and having Babich as your defensive coordinator calling plays cannot happen. I'm not saying fire him, but if the Panthers game doesn't go well on the defensive side of the football, they have to relinquish the play calling duties for Babich. Now, I don't know about you guys, but it has felt to me like the Bills have really been hit or miss on defense, and I think this number here kind of shows that. They have the 4th most tackles for loss versus the run with 26. So that's a good number, obviously. But they have the 5th most missed tackles versus run. So it feels like they're either making a big stop behind the line of scrimmage or giving up a big chunk play on a missed tackle. And this data kind of shows that is true. That is exactly what has happened with this Buffalo Bills team, and it's brutal to see. And it's really hard to win games when you're missing tackles to that level, but it also shows how they're able to kind of squeak out those victories with those tackles for loss and forcing those negative plays. Because when the Bills force other teams to be one-dimensional, that is when they're deadly on defense, and that has been the case for years now. As we get into the end of this episode, I just want to show this as well. In cover 3, which is something the Bills have run a lot this season because they've had to stack the box a little bit. They've had to go with a one-high safety. And last year, they were very efficient. 8th in EPA per play. Their defensive success percentage was 2nd in the NFL. Now in all those categories, they're bottom 5. And just absolutely brutal numbers for a team that struggles to defend the run. A lot of the times you want to be in cover 3 against the run so you can, have some of those run blitzes, have a shell in the backside, but this safety pairing is just not cutting it for them, and that's why they haven't been successful and have given up those big chunk plays. And what we saw with, Drake London having way too much cushion on those third down plays. We saw it with Zay Flowers against the Bills. We saw it with Zay Flowers against the Ravens. We saw it with Stephon Diggs against the Patriots. They need to get better in cover 3, and they need to get better in general, just not missing tackles. It comes down to that. So in my opinion, it comes down to their game against the Carolina Panthers next week. They have the bye week this week, but if they are not able to stop the run against the Panthers, it could be a long game, and I think they can be an upset watch because this is a Panthers team that has some weapons on the offensive side of the football, specifically with that two-headed monster in the backfield with Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard. So that's kind of the takeaways of this episode. We'll see you next time as we have some more Bills coverage coming to you during the bye week, and hopefully we'll be talking about some trades soon. But that's just fingers crossed. I'm Josh Schreiber for Bills Digest. We'll see you next time.